Our gospel comes from John chapter 1. The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him about whom Moses in the law and the prophets wrote, Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." When Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him, he said of him, "Here is truly an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael asked him, "Where did you get to know me?" Jesus answered, "I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you." Nathanael replied, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus answered, "Do you believe because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than these." And he said to him, "Very truly, I tell you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man." This is the gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So our gospel reading starts with the next day. The next day, and what comes before that is calling more disciples. So Jesus had just said, "Come and see," to Andrew and Philip. And he had called his first disciples in John's gospel. We're in chapter 1 of John here. And so the next day, we have this guy named Nathanael, after he had called Andrew and Simon Peter. And then we have Nathanael and Nathanael and Philip the next day. They're all the same, right? No, they're not. So he's calling disciples. He invites them. Jesus says, "Come and see." And then in our gospel today, Philip says, "Come and see." And Philip doesn't just say, "Come and see" to anybody. He says it to Nathanael, who at first glance says, "What good? Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Imagine saying that about Jesus. Imagine judging Jesus for where he's from. Maybe it's not too hard to imagine because we judge other people for things all the time. This is a perfect example of prejudice, of making an assumption. Nathanael makes an assumption here about who Jesus is solely based on where he is from. Can anything good come out of Appalachia? Can anything good come out of South Chicago or Camden? Can anything good come out of these places or these people? We make these assumptions all the time, just like Nathanael does. This judgment, snap judgment. But then things move very quickly in this gospel reading. I don't know if you noticed, but they move very quickly. Nathanael says, "Can anything good?" And then Philip says, "Well, come and see. Come and see for yourself, Nathanael." And then Jesus says, "Here is a man in whom there is no deceit," about the guy who just criticized him. Maybe he's being sarcastic. Maybe he actually knows Nathanael to be a beloved child of God. Who knows exactly what Jesus is doing here? But he definitely catches Nathanael off guard. Because if you say something mean to someone and they kill you with kindness, so to speak, it catches you off guard. And so then Nathanael says, "Wait a second, you know me? How do you know me? How do you know me, Jesus?" And Jesus says, "Before Philip saw you, I saw you under the fig tree. I saw you there." And I love this because we can go down so many rabbit holes about what was happening under that fig tree, right? Was Nathanael in a moment of vulnerability? Was he crying under the fig tree? Was he longing for God, longing for more, longing for a different way? What was he doing under that fig tree? We'll never know. But we know that Jesus sees him there, and in seeing him, Nathanael is changed. And Nathanael goes from, "Can anything good come from Nazareth?" to, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." He makes 3 proclamations about who Jesus is in that very moment. This person from Nazareth, who he had all these prejudices about, is now a rabbi, a teacher, is now the Son of God, is now the King of Israel. Those are big titles for someone from lowly Nazareth. Nathanael does a complete 180 in this story in just a few verses. It's amazing to me how quickly things happen in this gospel lesson from John. He changes from prejudice to appreciation so quickly. And I think about how this does not happen very often in our world. Think about the last time that you had a deep ingrained prejudice about someone. And think about the last time you changed your mind and did a 180 on that prejudice. It's hard to think of a time maybe, right? It doesn't happen very often. We see these ingrained prejudices more and more in our world. We're in an election cycle right now. They're just going to become more and more prevalent. What good can come from that person? Can anything good come? Think about those deep-seated prejudices that we have. And think about how quickly Nathanael changes his mind here in this story. And two things happen to make him change his mind. There's an invitation. Philip says, "Come and see." When's the last time someone was really rude or really mean and we didn't write them off? Instead, we invited them in. Philip easily could have said, "All right, this guy's clearly not a disciple. Let's go on to the next one." But instead he says, "Come and see. Come and see who this Jesus guy is. Come and see. I'm inviting you in." And then the second thing is Nathanael sees. But he sees not through his vision, but he sees through being seen. He is seen. He is known by God. He is known by Jesus. Jesus sees him under the fig tree and knows exactly who he is. And he proclaims who he is to him. He tells him, "You're beloved." And in that invitation to come and see, and in that seeing and being known, Nathanael is able to change his perspective. There was an article in Time magazine recently that's literally titled, "How to Actually Change Someone's Mind." How to actually change someone's mind. And that had a lot of the things that you would expect, like empathy, find common ground, set boundaries, know when to walk away from the conversation, those types of things, right? But one of the things in that article that stood out to me was tell stories, not just facts. Tell stories, not just facts. Maybe you were able to think of a time where you had a prejudice and you changed your mind earlier. And if you were, I bet it had something to do with the humanity of another person, with a story of another person, not a news article or facts. Because when these prejudices are so ingrained in us, we can't see the facts. But we can still see each other. We can still see God in one another. And so the power of telling stories. In this article, I use an example in this section of a study that was done in 2016 in South Florida. There was a lot of anti-transgender legislation on the ballot. And they had people going door to door to door, talking to people and telling stories. People who were transgender, people who were allies, telling stories about what it means and how harmful this legislation is if it's passed. And they found that in these 10-minute interactions of telling stories, not the facts, telling stories, that people's minds were actually changed for 3 months after that in a survey because of the power of telling stories. I've seen this firsthand in my life as a gay person. I can't just walk into a room and say, "I'm gay," because a lot of times people will think of me like Nathanael thought of Jesus in that moment. They'll write me off. They'll have prejudices. Instead, I try to get to know people on a personal level, tell stories about who I am, about my family, about why I'm still here in the church. In the midst of all that writing off, there's power in telling stories. There's power in being who you are, in being known as who you are under that fig tree, whatever that moment may be, whatever that piece of you is that people constantly write off. Tell those stories. Come and see. Come and see who I am. Come and see what my family's like. Come and see for yourself. Then you can write me off if you want, but tell those stories. Tomorrow is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and I think Martin Luther King Jr. was the best at this come and see, at this telling stories. That's why his legacy still lives on. This quote from MLK, if you want to move people, it has to be towards a vision that's positive for them, that taps important values, that gets them something they desire, and it has to be presented in a compelling way so that they feel inspired to follow. This is the legacy of MLK. This come and see. Come and see that separate but equal is not equal at all. Come and see the humanity of me and my siblings, MLK would say. Come and see the power of nonviolence intervention when a group of people do it together. Come and see. Come and see in Montgomery, come and see in Selma, come and see in Atlanta, come and see in DC. Come and see this vision that I have for a beloved community. Come and see. MLK told stories. He told stories that pulled on people's heartstrings, and he got other people involved. He said, come and see. This is what our gospel lesson invites us to do. Invites us to be agents of telling stories, agents of justice and reconciliation in this way, agents of inviting other people to come and see who this Jesus guy is, even when they write him off. To come and see God in one another, to be known by God in this place, and to know who God is and what that means for us and our story. We are known by God. There's not a question about that. We hear that in our baptism. We're named and claimed as beloved children, as Lila and Will were this morning. And in Psalm 139, we hear these words so clearly, that God knows us, that God knew us, and that God still knows us. I'm going to read part of Psalm 139, which we read as our call to worship. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in, behind and before. Lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It's so high that I cannot attain it. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works that I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you. When I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth, your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them as yet existed. How weighty to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. I try to count them, they are more than the sand. I come to the end, I am still with you. We are known by God, a God who sees us under the fig tree, a God who, even when we write God off, invites us in to come and see. God knows us, each of us, our inward parts knit us together. We get to see this. We get to bear witness to this. We get to know this story as our story. And we get to invite others in as well. We get to say, come and see. Come and see that this God knows me and this God knows you too. Amen.